Hello everyone, and welcome to the How to Paint series. Today we're looking at the Stormtroopers. These are from the game Star Wars Legion, and they're available in the core set or as a standalone expansion. So these guys I've had built for a while, and I want to do something special with their bases. So because they're already glued, I'm going to throw them in the freezer for 20 minutes, and then once they're frozen, it's easier to break down that super glue. And then I'm going to glue on some bark chips and some rocks and things. For these guys, I want to do a kind of Mustafar lava kind of base to them. So to achieve that look, I'm going to be using Vallejo's earth texture. And I'm just applying this to all the gaps where I didn't cover it already with some of the scenery. And then I'm using AK's Dark and Dry Crackle effects. And this is a wet paint that when it dries, it actually starts to crack. So I've had some experience with this in the past. This is going to be a bit of a learning experience. And while those are drying, I'm just going to attach the Stormtroopers to some temporary bases with just some simple PVA or Elmer's glue. So I'm going to prime the Stormtroopers in just a pure white. This is just a simple all-round coverage. And then I'm just going to take a black and start laying in some of those details, like the lenses, the gaps between the armor, the rim of the helmet, that kind of stuff. I'm not bothering with the guns or the hands just yet. I'm getting all the detail work done early because I can always clean it up with some of the white. And now I'm switching over to a speed paint. This is Grim Black, and I'm applying this to the guns and the fingers on the hands. I'm also using this for some of the special units, like the rocket launcher here, and the Heavy's backpack and machine gun. And now what I'm hoping to do is hit these guys with just a very light grey wash. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing 1 part Grim Black, 3 parts Holy White, 1 part Flow Enhancer, and 3 parts Speed Paint Medium. So the way I measure this is if I just do 1 drop is 1 part and 3 drops is 3 parts, and then I'll double that depending on how much mixture I want to make. And you can see it comes on pretty thick here. So I'm just applying this all over, and the Flow Enhancer will actually slow down the drying time. So then I take the Speed Paint Medium, just pure Speed Paint Medium, and pull away some of that wash in some of the more flatter, plainer areas. I'll also use a fairly dry brush here just to wick away some of that pooling that you can see. And I'll just take my time, go all the way around the miniature. The wash does take a while to dry, and it will dry a little lighter than what it looks like as well. And then this is just some white mixed with some Flow Enhancer. So it's very thin, takes a while to dry. And I'm just going around and just highlighting back up to white some of those areas that the wash settled in. So the plain areas of the thigh, the cuff, the shin, that kind of thing. This is great for getting some of those edges along the arms. This is a really nice, quick and easy recipe. And then just gently some of those details on the helmet. I don't want to obscure too much. And lastly, the top of the helmet as well. And this technique you can apply to clone troopers also. So with the bases, you can kind of see some cracks in the base. I didn't really get the effect that I was really hoping for, so I need to experiment with that some more. But I'm just going to hit these with a black prime initially. And then I'm going to take some white, and I'm just layering in a kind of what I feel like would be a lava river or something. I'm taking care to avoid some of the larger areas like the rocks that are poking up. And now through the airbrush, I'm using Slaughter Red, and I'm applying this to the edges of that white. Really, the white is kind of like a sketch where I want the effects to go. It also helps with the vibrancy as well. And I'm switching out to Fire Giant Orange. I'm applying this in the middle area. This didn't really add too much, but it's good to see the layers build up here. So I thinned down some Trollslayer Orange with some airbrush medium, and I'm running that through the airbrush here, much more vibrant orange. I'm switching out for a yellow now, so this is Yriel yellow. Once again, thinned down with some airbrush medium, and just very carefully applying it in smaller and smaller stages. And here's some moon dust. This is just a normal paint from Army Painter, and again, just the smallest amount of highlight. And I've really watered down some white. This is kind of a milky texture. And I'm applying this, just hoping it would sink into some of those cracks and things. It does. You can kind of see it just really soak up. And just to add a little bit more saturation, I'm using Vallejo's Flourescent Yellow. Again, this is entirely optional for your basing. You can put them on any environment. I wanted to do something similar because I was inspired by this previous project, which you can find linked here. And then I'm dry brushing on a black. Ultimately, this does end up being a little bit of a mistake, but I'll go over that a little later in the video. I'm happy with how much the bases glow, and I just feel like the dry brushing took it down too much of a notch. I am, however, dry brushing on grey on just the rocks. At this point, you could glue your Stormtroopers onto the bases if you're happy with them. I'm actually going to put some markings on them, so I'm using Mephiston Red, and I'm going for the Shocktrooper look. So using reference, I'm just following those markings along the armor in that red. I've already got some plain Stormtroopers that I've done previously, so it's nice to break it up and do something a little different. For the markings on the helmet, I find that just a little bit of flow enhancer will really help sketch in some of those more difficult lines, as you won't find as much friction on the brush. And for some of the smaller markings, I'm just going in as tight as I can, and then I'll clean it up with some of the white. I'm just going around the model making sure I got everything, using as much reference as I can. And while I have that white paint to hand, I'm just using some quick flicks and chips on the armor, just to give some impression of some battle damage. It also helps to break up some of those bigger areas of red and add some visual interest. And with some gentle pressure, I'm able to break them off the temporary bases, clean them up, and then I'm just dry fitting them on the new bases just to try and find the best position for their feet. And then just some super glue and attach them to the bases. To help ground them on their environments, I'm dry brushing some black. This is to kind of represent some soot and ash on their feet. And then I'm using some of that Fire Giant Orange speed paint. I've thinned this right the way down with water, and I'm applying this to the inner thighs and the chest and things just to kind of give the impression of a glow. You can kind of see me applying it here to the underside of the arms as well. It's okay if this is a little thin, you can always build up in layers, and then I'm using a damp brush just to feather those edges as well. And normally I'd end the video here, but I just really wasn't happy with the saturation on those bases. So I went back really carefully with the airbrush. I didn't want to hit the Stormtroopers in any way. So I'm going straight for the orange here. This is the Trollslayer orange. And just very gently reapplying some of that glow effect. And then I'm building up to the yellow and the moon dust as well. And this time, rather than dry brushing, I'm strategically placing some black paint strokes and dabs, rather than dry brushing the whole effect and taking it all down. This just kind of allows that glow just to poke through. And I'm much happier with this effect. I'm glad I went back and did this. It was kind of scary, but yeah, this really sells it. And I'm just dry brushing on some light gray on some of the heavier weapons, and also on the commander's pauldron. And I'm building this up to a kind of ash gray. Lastly, I'm using some Caledor sky here and just applying this to some of the details on the heavy's backpack. Not spending too much time on this. With some few final highlights, these guys are ready to go. I like to finish the miniatures out with a painting of some black on the rims. And there you have it, a core unit of Stormtroopers, just slightly upgraded visually. I really appreciate all the usual YouTube stuff like subscribing and commenting. I like to hear from you guys as well. I'm really pleased with how these came out, and I've got a lot more Legion coming in the future. Thanks for watching. Happy painting and happy gaming!